Okay.
There we
There
go.
we
Now we're
go.
live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to NJEA's first ever Google Online Hangout. I'm going to be your host tonight. My name's Jim Boyce. I'm a field representative outside of headquarters, and I'm here joined by my colleague, Mike Ritzius. Mike, would you like to say hello to all your fans out there?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. So without any further ado, I'd like to go along and introduce you to our panel tonight. First up, I'm going to call on Roxanne. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and maybe why you wanted to be on the Hangout this evening.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I have been a teacher for over 20 years. I've worked in Willingboro for almost 20 of those. I am an AR and on the executive committee. I am very concerned about the new evaluation process, and I think it's an important issue for our members. That's why I
Thank
wanted
you,
to be a part.
Roxanne. Great. Thanks, Roxanne, and thanks so much for being here tonight. Kate Baker, why don't you go second?
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Baker, 9th and 12th grade English teacher at Southern Regional High School in Manahawkin. I'm on our executive board for our local and part of the evaluation committee and doing some of the data collection of it. And I'm really passionate about this because I'm looking to the future of it to use that evaluation for professional development and to make ourselves stronger overall and into the future. So happy to see everyone.
And we're happy to see you, Kate Baker, and thanks so much for being here with us tonight. How about we hear next from Mike Kaminsky. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Jim. My name's Mike Kaminsky. I am the president of the Delran Education Association in Burlington County. And I got involved in the evaluation process basically because I wanted to make sure that our administrators got this right for our members, because our members, take great pride in what they do, and they want to know that if they're going to be assigned a number, that it's a number they deserve. And so we just wanted to make sure that we could keep track of those things in a sensible way for them.
Thanks, Mike, and thank you so much for your time being here tonight. Next, I want to call on Thomas Stelling. Hi, Thomas. How are you?
Hey, Jim. Yeah, I'm Tom Stelling. I'm with Kingsway Regional School District down in Gloucester County, and I'm there. We started our evaluation committee last year primarily because we were concerned with ensuring that there was fairness and objectivity in the whole process, so we ended up doing a lot of work with that.
Thanks, Thomas. And, Thomas, I couldn't help but notice today I happened to get my first issue, my November issue of the NJEA Review. This, of course, is a paper copy, and if you'd like, you can see this online. If you go to the NJEA, if you go to the Apple Store or the Google Market, you can download your review app and check it out online also. But, Thomas, I couldn't help but notice on page 33, there's an article here, Different Paths to Advocacy. Great article about the work that the East Brunswick Education Association is doing with their president, Dana. Hopefully she's watching tonight. And Thomas, you're really a superstar here, Kingsway EA, on page 36, all about your efforts. There we go, right there.
Oh, wow.
Just wanted to give you a shout out there that I got to look at that today, and something we'll be talking about a little later.
Thanks.
You got it. Why don't we hear next from Mark Weber. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Jim. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Great.
Well, since it's Halloween and we're showing things, let me show something scary to everybody. All right, try to calm down. My name's Mark Weber. I'm a music teacher in Warren Township in Somerset County. I'm a doctoral student in education policy at Rutgers, and I'm also a blogger, jerseyjazzman.blogspot.com. I've done a lot of writing lately about TNJ and Achieve NJ, looking at what I feel to be some pretty significant problems with the process. And I'm very anxious to hear tonight from members and also from presidents and other officials in EAs what they're seeing out there. And whether or not it's going to line up with some of the things that I've found while doing research. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Mark, and we are certainly happy to have you with us, of course, and hear from your expertise as we go along. And last but not least, Ani McHugh. I asked Ani to go last because Ani has prepared, at my request, a special introduction for us. So, Ani, take it away.
Super special. Hi, everyone. I'm Ani McHugh. I teach 9th, 11th, and 12th grade English at Delran. I do the social media page for the Delran EA, and I also blog at teacherbiz.wordpress.com. So why are we here? So everybody knows that teacher evaluation is important, and as professionals, I think we're always looking for meaningful feedback that's designed to help us improve our practice. But in recent years, there have been dramatic changes to teacher evaluation systems, not just in New Jersey, but across the country. And in general, they look reasonable on paper, but they are, I think, inherently flawed in practice. So we're currently in the second year of Achieve NJ, and it's the system that says it's going to rate a teacher's effectiveness based on his or her classroom practice, but also on SGOs and SGPs, and the more we work with that system, the more problems we see with it. So last year, which was the first year of Achieve NJ, NJEA officers delivered over 1,000 letters to the State Board of Ed detailing the problems with the system, and I think as a result, the Department of Ed announced that it would reduce the impact that standardized tests had on teacher evaluation for the next 2 years. So this year, we need to continue to document what's going on, the very real and numerous issues that we have with this system, because ultimately the policies that it promotes are hurting students and hurting teachers and hurting public schools in general. So we need parents and community members to understand the problems with the system and the way that those problems affect the communities. And we need to take control of our evaluations, I think, starting at the local level, so that politicians and other non-educators who want to standardize teaching and learning are not successful in doing so.
Thanks, Ani, and that's certainly something we'll talk about a little later when you mention the community there. I believe that's our last topic. Before we go any further, we have about 75 people tuned in, checking us out, and hopefully that number grows over the next hour. We expect to be here about an hour, finishing up around 8 o'clock. And if you're just tuning in, underneath the YouTube video, you'll notice our Today's Meet live chat. Feel free to ask a question, and we'll be throwing those in the mix while we talk tonight. So everybody ready for our first topic, and it's going to be a round-robin question. I'm going to throw it out there to all the panelists, and each of you will have a couple minutes to discuss this one. Why did you start this? Why did you start organizing around evaluation efforts in your local? And why don't we use the same order we used before? So Roxanne, would you like to start us off with that and just a little bit about why your local decided this was something important to do?
Hi, sure. We had no direction from our administration, and I am so thankful that we started training our people through NJEA meetings and workshops, SGOs. No one knew what they were. Our administration didn't know what to do, and unfortunately, there was a tremendous amount of inconsistency. And when you're talking tenure charges and our jobs being on the line, I thought that was unacceptable. So I really applaud our NJEA, our WEA, I think someone said it earlier, for kind of deciphering the law and the regulations around the new evaluation system and really getting in front of this to help its members understand the process. And that's where most of my understanding has come from, is the association and not administration.
Thanks, Roxanne. And I'm going to throw it out there to Mark. Do you have a follow-up with that?
Yeah, I sure do. I think that's really interesting, Roxanne, because I'm hearing many of the sorts of the same thing over and over again. It doesn't matter what district you're talking about. So the question is, why is that? Why were we seeing so many administrators so many central offices struggling, trying to figure out what to do in that first year. And it's obvious to me the NJDOE was trying to build the plane at the same time they were trying to fly it. They hadn't worked out all of the very serious issues that needed to be worked out. One of them that was my pet peeve was it should be a 1 to 4 score on teacher observations with your SGPs, which are 1 to 99. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense to do that. And I kept looking and seeing whether they were going to come up with guidance, and it took them a long time. And frankly, they came up with an answer that, in my opinion, is incorrect. It's not something that should happen. So it's clear to me what Roxanne is saying. This really comes from Trenton. And Trenton was not ready for this process. And yet, because they wanted it so badly, they put it out there anyway. And we were expected to be the ones to sort of pick up the slack from where they left off. That speaks to me that this first year, and when the cycle is finally done, when teachers finally get their SGPs and they're put together in this kind of final evaluation for the tested grades, I think there's a very good case to be made that we weren't ready for this, and those evaluations I don't believe should be used in high-stakes assessments. Others may have different opinions, and again, I'm anxious to hear whether Roxanne's story is something that's going to be that we've seen replicated throughout the state.
Well, thanks for that, Mark. And without any of that happening, we wouldn't be here having this pleasant conversation. So there's one, maybe the only positive of the whole entire thing. And Mike Mannion, hello.
Hello.
Mike Mannion, we're a couple minutes in here, and thanks for joining us. You had some technical difficulties, but you worked it out. You just want to introduce yourself and give us a little point about why you wanted to be a part of the Hangout tonight.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm Mike Mannion, and I'm from Central Regional. The reason that I wanted to get involved in the discussion about evaluations was we rolled out the Marzano model last year, and this when the scores came back from our rollout, we were told not to worry and that the scores really wouldn't affect us as educators. But it turned out when our scores came back, we had 0 of our teachers rated as highly effective. We had 133 rated as effective and 8 rated as partially effective. So when we were told it would have no effect, it actually did have an effect, and now we have people with their jobs on the line, which is unfortunate.
Wow, so it's pretty heavy stuff. And Mike, thanks for being here. And Mike, we're on the first question, so I'm going to ask you to go last. So listen in, and you're a quick study, you'll catch up. But I was going with Kate. Kate.
So I think that the real important piece to look at with this too is we're in the business of knowledge, and knowledge is power. You guys hear me all right? Knowledge is power, so therefore with this model, and yet it feels like the horse and the cart that everything's being mixed up here, but really if we take the data that we can get from this process, we can make ourselves stronger overall. So with our union, it's looking at where are we weak, where are we strong, and taking ownership of this model. So we created our own rubrics, using that DEAC committee, and it's about bringing the union back together and bringing the membership back together for 100% involvement. And for moving forward, make ourselves stronger as a profession. No more complacency. We want to be able to do more and be knowledgeable with what we're doing.
So strength right there. That's really good to hear, Kate, and thank you. Next up, Mike Kaminsky.
Okay, so we're using the Danielson model in Delran, and when we first started doing this, we actually started in the same year that the official state pilot was going on. So we ran our own pilot because we were concerned about, what this was going to mean for everybody. And as soon as we got started with this process, I mean, we saw problems right away. Sort of to hit on what Mark Weber had said, there was very little guidance from the state, and I think that was intentional. And so we knew that we had to be the most knowledgeable people in the room about this. And we know how important our evaluations are to our members. And so, we started tracking this information, to make sure that we could make this, whatever this process is, the best it for our members.
Sounds great, Mike. And Ani, I was going to call on you next, but you're from the same local as Mike, so I think he kind of took it away with that answer. You're shaking your head yes. So how about we hear from Thomas Stelling, the superstar of the NJEA review?
Thanks, Jim. So one of the biggest concerns that we had when we were working at Kingsway, when we're working with the Marzano model there, is the idea of a common language. Marzano brings with it all of the different elements that are intended to split teaching up and dice it up and examine each and every part of classroom practice. And we were very concerned about when our administrators would tell us certain visuals or certain practices would get you to an innovating, or would get you to an applying, or would get you only a developing. And one of the problems and concerns that we had at our school, we didn't feel like we were getting an effective idea as to what it actually meant to reach any of those levels. So going into this year, and we had done it for a year additional, we weren't really a pilot, but we had been doing it a year early. Going into this process, we were very concerned that there didn't seem to be a very common understanding as to what it meant to be applying, what it meant to be innovating across all 17 administrators in our district. So we needed to find a way of determining what is this fairness, what is this objectivity that we could infuse into the process. And that's where we began organizing with our evaluation committee to try and collect this data, to slog through it, and to try and pull out a story that through the numbers and through the data of what objectivity in this new process means.
Great, and for anyone who wants to see the work that Thomas and his local did, Kingsway, you can visit our website, njea.org/Achieve New Jersey Organizing, and we have the complete Kingsway evaluation report that you'll read about in the NJEA review. Thanks, Thomas. And last but not least, Mike Mannion, why don't you kind of transition us here? How did things get started in Central Regional?
Things got started at Central Regional in terms of us collecting evaluation data. We went to our CBC in September, or was it early October, and we saw that Little Egg Harbor was collecting evaluation data using a Google form. And what we've done, we just rolled this out last Tuesday. We're doing the same exact thing. So we piggybacked on their idea, and on Tuesday we sent Tuesday. I'm sorry?
You're good, Mike. Keep going.
Okay. Okay. I'm getting some feedback. So we have still getting an echo. We rolled this out, and a lot of members are.
Hey, Mike. Hang on a second. Let's go over to somebody else so we can figure out the issue.
Thanks, Mike, and hang in there, Mike. And Mark, you want to tell us what Danielson says about teachers and where they live?
Well, Charlotte has said that. Oh dear, I'm getting back to. Hang on a sec. Charlotte has said that teachers live in, and so by design, you're not going to get highly effective. So I'm not very surprised that there are locals that we're not getting any highly effective rated teachers. By design, it is not supposed to be that way.
Right. It's a very good point to bring up. And, listening to all of you speak, I just had a follow-up question maybe someone can answer. How about Ani? So it's important to note here that this isn't about attacking administrators, right, Ani? We're not on the...
So administrators obviously are new to this in the same way that we are, and they're getting conflicting information, and they're being trained on, you know, each of the models or one of the evaluation models. And even, you know, I think the goal of this, a lot of these models, is to have a very specific rubric, so to speak, that administrators are using to evaluate teachers. But the problem is that within any given rubric, there's still room for subjectivity. So part of the problem, you know, is that people interpret things differently, and there's no way that's gonna, you know, nothing that's really gonna change that. But we're all working for the goal of, you know, improving instruction, and administrators are an important part of that. So no, it's not about them. It's about, you know, directives that are coming down that are unclear, and an evaluation model that is, you know, some models that are flawed, some more so than others. But no, it's not about attacking administrators at all. It's about coming up with a way to provide meaningful feedback for teachers.
Kate, do you have anything to follow up on that?
It really is a team approach. We want, you know, in education, we look at our classrooms, it's us and the students. And so that same model should also carry over into the greater sphere of the school. It should never be us versus them, but it should be everyone with each other working together. So it should be teachers with students, administrators with teachers, parents, community with each other. So it needs to be a team approach, because if we only just keep making it about us versus them, we're never going to be able to solve the problems that are in education. And we're never going to be able to grow and move forward as a profession.
Wow, if we had that recorded for a commercial, Kate, that would be... Oh, wait, this actually is being recorded, and afterwards you'll be able to find it on our website, njea.org, Achieve New Jersey Organizing. And if you're just tuning in, feel free to join the live chat that's underneath the YouTube link on our Today's Meet. And finally, Mike, now that we've got those technical issues resolved, because they were my fault, Mike, you want to continue with the work of the Central Regional EA, and that'll transition us into our second topic.
Yes, our work again. Last week on Tuesday, we rolled out a Google form, and the Google form we were using mimicked the form we saw Little Egg Harbor using that was announced at our county CBC. We had a meeting, and they explained how they were collecting data using a Google form. So we have the Marzano model and all 41 elements in a Google form. So once our members are observed, they can go into this form and they can record the scores that they received from their observer. And we're collecting this data in a spreadsheet, and we'll look at it, and we'll use that with our DEA committee, and we'll also use that to discuss with our administration how the interpretation of the model from both sides, our association side and the administration side, to come to a collective understanding of how to use this model and make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to evaluating our members.
Thanks, Mike. And you mentioned a Google Doc there, correct?
Yes, Google Form.
So with your Google Form, you must have had a data collection team in place. Could you talk a little about that?
We actually don't have a data collection team at the moment. We've just shared this all with our members, and we have it on our association website where they can come and download their information. Right now, since we're just starting, we're in the process of creating a local evaluation committee to analyze this data and to share it with the DEA committee and our admin.
Okay, so you're just getting things started, but you know, luckily on the panel here we have some people a little farther ahead than you, which is okay, and I know one of them is Tom. So Tom, why don't you talk a little about your data collection team? What has your team done, if you want to elaborate a little more on your introductory statement?
Sure. My evaluation committee. We're good? Okay. My evaluation committee was headed by Joe Coupler, who's actually my colleague in the chemistry department at Kingsway, and he and I are data crazy, really, when you get right down to it. And what we decided we needed to do was we actually needed to get the the forms, the evaluation observation records from all the faculty members, and most of them, as a standard, had 3 observations during the year, so we needed to collect those. And we wanted to do a data analysis, so of course we had to physically collect them from everybody. So we needed a whole committee to be able to organize this, so we ended up requesting people to become a part of it. Now, it's an evaluation committee, so we set the expectation of the committee to be threefold. Number one, we wanted them to help people understand the Marzano evaluation system, but also be able to better prepare themselves to go into the post-observation conference and advocate for themselves, which we find to be one of the most important things to communicating with the administrator about your evaluation. But after that, be able to effectively draft a rebuttal statement for observations that a teacher gets that they don't necessarily agree with, clarification statements that are written in an appropriate professional manner. And then last but not least was the fairly from everybody in the association, so that the data analysis could take place. This was a difficult process for us because there are a lot of trust issues that are inherent with observations. People hold them very dear to themselves, especially if they're not doing very well in the classroom. They don't want people to know that they're struggling. So releasing these observations is difficult and requires you to have conversations with people in the association. Let them know, number one, that their observation data is going to be private, that it's not going to be, like, the data itself is not going to be spread. It's aggregated. Because we're not looking at their observation, we're looking at all of the observations. So when they start to realize that you're not going to be publishing their observations and letting everybody know all the gruesome details, that all you're looking for is numbers, they start to trust you, and you can collect them, and you can show them that everybody is starting to turn them in. Everybody is starting to participate in this, and once that happens, you start to get this landslide of observations because people start to feel safer with the group. But there are still people. Number one, it's a tough year. Everybody's really busy. So you'll say, "Oh, I need your observations." You'll send out an email, and everybody goes, "Yeah, yeah," and they'll put it in their email folder with everything else that they get from everybody. And so you find that if you really want those observations, you have to go and you have to talk to them. There were a couple times that I was literally following people back to their classrooms to collect their observations from them. I wasn't bullying them. I was hounding them because I didn't want them to forget, and they would say, "Yeah, no, I'll get it to you later," and then they would forget. So I wanted them to know that they were handing it to a person. They weren't just sending it off into an email. They were giving it to somebody that they knew and they could trust, and that was an important one. The other one was letting people know that we didn't just want the bad observations. We needed all of the observations: the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty, the wonderful. We needed all of them to get a good feel of what was going on in the school. Again, it wasn't a witch hunt. We weren't looking for just finding the bad. We wanted to find the good as well, and we wanted to celebrate with the successes of the administration in engaging in this process, as well as some of the struggles that they were having. But we needed to be able to identify them fairly, and that was where the data collection was the most important.
Wow. So, you know, Tom, I couldn't help but notice in your review article that you had 80% of your members submit their observations. I think that's great. And, you know, Roxanne, with your efforts in Willingboro, how does this help us struggling teachers?
Well, one of the things is that we can't help teachers when we don't know what their score is. And so we also have a very high number of responses of the members are willing to share their observations. I mean, we set it up as a type of advocacy. If we don't know you're getting, non-proficient, then how can we provide you with tools or show you how to ask administration to do their part, whether it's professional development, whether it's mentoring, and we want to pair teachers up with those that might be getting outstanding so that they can reach out to the members in addition to the administration. So we're really just trying to make sure there's transparency, so somebody doesn't fall through the cracks.
Great, and yeah, we wouldn't want that to happen to anyone. And how about Mark? Do you have anything to add to this? You know, does collecting these observations and hosting a data collection team in your local, does that help identify experts to support the effort?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I'm just so impressed too with Thomas how your district has set up this. Clearly, there's a culture of transparency, and that's terrific. And I know that's a tough road to hoe for a lot of EAs, but you know that doesn't mean that it can't happen. So you know, kudos to you for doing that. I was just thinking that every school district has all kinds of experts in mathematics and science because we've got people who are teaching it. So you have a built-in resource at your school to be able to do really good data analysis. But I think that Thomas's story there is really showing us how important it is to make sure that teachers feel comfortable in being able to give up that data. Once you have it, you should be able to find lots and lots of people on staff who can help you with the analysis.
Great. Yeah, an effort like Thomas's would certainly need it need a lot of members behind it and supporting it, and you know that's a tribute to his leadership as president. Why don't we continue the discussion with Mike Kaminsky? Anything to add to this topic?
Sure. I'll just tell you about how we got started in data collection really quickly. We did it the old-fashioned way with pencil and paper. And I actually uploaded a form. I don't know if you'll be able to share that with somebody. I'm not going to mess around with the tech stuff right now, but you see that form there? We had a real simple form that incorporated the various elements of the Danielson model, and we just asked members to fill it out and tell us who their observer was, when they got observed, you know, was it short or long, announced, unannounced, did they have a pre- and post-observation conference, you know, was it face-to-face or electronic, and then to just list the scores that they got in each domain. And, you know, one of the things that we're looking for there, of course, is any kind of procedural errors, because that's something that ultimately will help us to protect members, you know, if they run into some trouble in year two. But really, what it also allowed us to do is start trying to track, you know, which administrators are looking for, you know, which aspects. You know, everybody has a certain area that they like. You know, some administrators like to see, you know, all your desks in a nice neat row, whereas other administrators might be looking for, you know, to think pair share. And so, you know, we wanted our members to know, you know, what administrators are looking for, so they can be a little bit better prepared for what was going to happen in these observations. What we did is we probably got about 65 to 70% of our members to respond via pen and paper last year, and many of them put their names on them, which was great. We made it optional last year because one of the things we were trying to do is sort of change the culture around the evaluations, and while they're still private personnel documents, we wanted our members to become more comfortable sharing those things with us so we can use it to help them. And you know, a real nice number of people you know, gave us their names last year. So this year what we decided to do, you know, we have a Google form that's online. You know, our members can log in through our Delran EA website, which is member password protected, thanks to NJEA's web components. And they can log in there and they can do this themselves. Very quick little radio boxes that they're going to click on and enter their scores and whatnot. And so we're gonna do that this year. But of course they have to. This year we told them, since it's year two officially, and the stakes are so much higher, that they need to give us their names, you know, so we can make sure that we, number one, like we were talking about earlier, so we can help members who might be scoring lower than we want them to be and give them that assistance, the mentoring that Roxanne was talking about. But also number two, so we can track any procedural errors and get back to them and say, look, here's some things that should have been happening that weren't, and we can make sure that we can advocate for them both during the process and, unfortunately, if we get to, the end of the process and some kind of negative action is being taken, that might affect their tenure.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, if you're just tuning in, check us out on the live chat at today's meet right under the YouTube link. And, we've heard a lot of questions about forms, a lot of comments about forms here, and you can find some sample forms on njea.org/Achieve New Jersey Organizing. And we did notice a today's meet question did come in, and we're going to throw this question to Tom Stelling. Are you ready? So we have a question from the audience. How do we use this data we're talking about to minimize the subjectivity of evaluation?
Subjectivity is a tough one. You got it?
Got it.
There's still, okay, there we go. Subjectivity is a tough one because there's subjectivity in teaching. Teaching itself is an art. And to boil it down to a science is something that's really difficult to do. I have a positive view of Marzano. However, Marzano was a training model that was set up to be more of a discussion between teacher and administrator and observer, not necessarily to be an evaluative model. And we understand that, and I think Marzano actually has acknowledged that as well. But the idea of the subjectivity of the model is something that you have to get around by trying to get your administrators to a certain agreement as to what it takes to be a certain level or be considered a certain level in a given element. And they do this themselves. They engage in a practice of determining rate or reliability. They'll go into a classroom and they will observe a specific element together, and then they'll collaborate on what they observe to be the level specific element. I understand that they spend a lot of work doing that, which is a positive effort on their part, and I appreciate that they do that work. But I also do see it a little bit in that way of letting students work together on a group test versus when they're actually out there on their own and they're doing the test themselves. So we want to be able to observe their practice in general and be able to compare them to each other. We did this at Kingsway with what's known as a total mean absolute deviation, and I don't want to get too deep into the numbers on it, but you can look for it in the report that's on the NJEA website. But what we tried to do was we tried to determine a way of comparing administrators to each other as they rated each given teacher. So whether a teacher was engaging in effective practice or was struggling in their practice really got boiled away when you're really looking at how the administrators are rating each other. It's not that the administrator is giving a low score or a high score. It's if they're giving a low or high score in relation to other administrators for that teacher. And of course, there's still subjectivity in that because you've got good days, bad days. What we're looking for is not the effect on the teacher, but we're looking for the general effect of the administrator. Are they always going into a classroom and are they always being the one who's rating the teachers more difficultly, giving them lower ratings on the elements, or are they always going in and giving higher elements and higher ratings, which is equally bad, even though it makes everybody feel good because everybody likes to get the higher ratings, but it still shows that there's disparity in the way in which the administrators have an opinion of what those means to be an effective teacher. So we look at that TMAD score, that total mean absolute deviation, as a way of determining not necessarily whether the administration is right, but whether as a team themselves they appear to have a common understanding of what the language is and what their expectations are for their teachers in the district. And as we see that administrators fall outside of a general range with their peers, either too high or too low, that's when we want to address it with the administration and address that as our concern.
Thanks, Thomas. I knew you could do that one. Great. So, Kate Baker, I just wanted to loop you into this part of the conversation here. If you could talk a little bit about the data collection team efforts in your local.
Thanks, Jim. it was actually our Uniserv rep, Mary Novotny, who approached our president to be a pilot for Ocean County, since we already had a response team in place. So, and our response team usually just handled the rebuttal piece of it. So this was pretty easy to then add the evaluation and the data collection team. So I got tapped because one of my hobbies is ed tech and using Google Forms and anything Google. So it was an easy thing to take the form that we had, our paper form, and turn it into a Google Doc. And we just made sure that the Google form mimicked exactly the layout and the order of topics on the paper form. And then we just tapped some other people who were really good with data entry and were comfortable with using computers, and we collected our paper copies from our membership. Again, we stressed that privacy piece, that confidentiality piece, because we wanted to build that trust, and we wanted to show them, again, it's not about us versus them. It's not about calling out the administrators or stirring the pot. This wasn't meant to be used as a weapon, but meant to be used as something to make us grow. So we collected the papers, did the data entry, and then we let the technology do the heavy lifting for us, because if you go in, once you have the spreadsheet of responses, and if you go into that on any of your spreadsheets, you can do this. If you go to form and then summary of responses, it gives you a beautiful pie chart that the data is already organized for you. And if you don't mind me screen sharing real quick, I'll just give you a quick view of it. So you can see, like, it's taken our 3s and 4s that we've entered and some of the other data, and we can see exactly with these graphs what our performance is with our membership. And then we can start to use this to build relevant PD, and we can also use it to pair up the, let's see, there it is. Did you guys get to see the screen share? You see that real quick? So then we can use this data to, again, pair up and create mentors, a mentoring program, team up with someone who's really strong in monitoring student learning with someone who's a little bit weaker. And it just gave a good range for us for where our strengths and weaknesses are and where we can move forward with this next piece, is that professional development piece. I think that's a key component of all this, is what do you do with this data? It's not enough just to have it, but we want to make sure that it moves us forward again as a profession, and it moves us together forward, you know. So that's where we're at now, Jim.
Wow, you've certainly come a long way, and Mark, we're hearing a lot of talk here about forms and data and analysis. Could you sum up this topic and give us a big picture overview before we go into our third topic?
Yeah, sure. One thing that strikes me about Marzano or Danielson or all of these protocols is that they train the evaluators to use a common language. And yet, teachers are not common. We all have our particular personalities. We all have our particular ways of approaching it. And I might choose to teach something in one way, and you might choose to teach it in another way. And that doesn't mean that we have to choose between one or the other. We have to allow for the art of teaching. And that's one of the things that concerns me. And I think it's one thing that if we take a good look at data as union members, we can be on guard for. Just as a concrete example, we all agree that students should have learning goals, and they should be articulated to students. No one would disagree with that, and that's a component of good teaching. But there are so many different ways to do that. And one thing that I worry about is an administrator walking through the door and looking up on your board, did you write it down? And if you wrote it down, then you're doing it. And if you didn't write it down, then you're not. there are all kinds of ways to communicate learning goals to children, and just because you wrote it on the board didn't mean that you actually communicated it and that you checked for understanding in your students. So we have to go deeper than just a checklist. Marzano, Danielson, they have their merits, but it's just a place to start. And I like this idea of doing some meaningful professional development following from it. But I also think we have to be on guard that this is a tool and it's limited, and we have to be careful that administrators are not using this as sort of an easy path to sort of check, 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 check. I've got my bell curve all laid out. Here's 5% highly effective. Here's all my effectives, and everybody's in their nice, even place. Again, teaching is as much of an art as it is a science. I would contend even more. We cannot let this quantitative kind of patina create this false sense that what we're dealing with is highly objective. It is subjective, and this is a way to sort of get some feedback, but it shouldn't be a way that administrators use this data to make high-stakes decisions without really going deeply into whether or not this is a teacher who is effective or not.
Thanks, Mark. So I think everyone listening, everyone tuning in, and by the way, I just checked, we're over 100 people now tuning in and checking out this conversation. You can join the live chat on the Today's Meet link right underneath the YouTube video. Feel free to throw a question out to the group. But I think everybody listening in has got the form aspect. Anybody can create a form, and we have some samples on our website, NJEA.org, Achieve New Jersey Organizing. But let's go into this a little deeper and really give some advice for the local leaders tuning in who want to do the tricky part, which is encouraging their members to hand in those observations and turn over the keys, so to speak. So Kate, do you have any advice out for any local leaders out there who are just a little leery about going into that territory?
It begins with the culture of your union, of your membership. And again, that trust keeps coming into play here. And that's one word that just keeps getting mentioned throughout this whole session is, do we trust our administrators to do what's right with this? Do we trust being able to be open with our classrooms and sharing this? So how do you build trust, and how do you change the culture? Well, it's got to be consistent, and it's got to be in small gestures that matter. You have to make sure that your people are seen as people and not just numbers, not just data on a page, that the individual person matters. So a lot of this still needs to be face-to-face, have conversations, and again, you got to change the culture to collaboration, and you got to be able to open the doors. You know, get people comfortable with having their classrooms open. Do teacher swapping, you know, have I'm going to come observe you and you observe me kind of thing. But again, it's all about that culture that you create with your membership. And if you're going into doomsday prepping, well, that's what you're going to get into the end. And if you go in with this coaching mentality of a positive thing, well, then who knows what you're going to come out of that? And who knows what positive things will come out of this? You know, I do think, yeah, we need to be mindful of how this could be used as a weapon, but I at the same time, I'd like to be looking at this as an opportunity, you know, as a way that you can bring your people back together and, again, see people on not just as data, but as professionals.
Great. And Roxanne, would you like to add to that and talk a little bit about how your local is pursuing this effort?
Sure. We held some great training sessions with Mike Kaminsky from Delran and our field rep, Patrick, and they kind of trained us on data collection and rebuttal writing. What we did then was we set up committees at each school, so there was a point of reference. We have, I believe, 7 buildings. And so what we wanted to do was canvass our members, and I did the middle school, And I think, as Kate said, it's got to be a face-to-face type thing to gain the trust. And what we did, I went to, I've been there almost 20 years in Willingboro, so I know a lot of the staff. And I believe it is that historic rapport that we have with them. They know the union is on their side. They know that we're trying to make sure we protect our members. Again, it's not a us or them thing. It's just a matter of knowledge. We try to take the lead and reach out to our administration to offer them information where, again, maybe the state was lacking on training them. So, again, we were trying to make it a win-win situation. I canvassed the members. I asked if they feel comfortable sharing their evaluations. I told them the first year, if they want, we could white out the names. Most of them, again, have been around for a while, so they're like, nope, don't even worry about it. What we did was tell them the reason why we needed the data. And again, it was just to see if there was consistency in following the regulations, if there were errors in, again, the numbers. If this was a 3, was it a 3 across the board? We also had some problems real quick with that. We were imposed upon with the Danielson framework on top of having to learn TeachScape. So the teachers that were not as computer savvy were really nervous about having to learn so much under one umbrella so quickly. But again, we reached out as a support and great feedback. So we are using, like Delran and some of the other districts, we are using Google Forms. We are having them just populate a survey so that we can get aggregate data. And we are also collecting the physical paper evaluations so we can actually read the comments, because that's where, if there's inconsistencies, that's where we're going to find it in the individual data.
Great, thanks, Roxanne. And how about we wrap this one up with Tom, the master, and you can hear more about Tom's efforts in Kingsway by reading the review either online through the app or the print version I have here. Tom, why don't you talk a little bit about we're hearing a lot from Roxanne and Kate about one-on-one conversations, and why don't you kind of wrap it up for us with that?
Yeah, the most important thing to remember as a leader in your local is that you are a colleague and a peer with these people. You work with them, you know them, and you want them to understand that they can trust you, that you are working you're not using them as a weapon, you're not using them in a fight, you're using them to show and to paint a picture with their help as to what's going on in your district. And we need to work together on this one. And you can show them, you need to reach out to them and personally show them that you are there to help them and advocate for them, not to wage battles with them.
Great, thanks, Tom. So Mike Mannion, you've heard, coming into this, someone who is just in the beginning stages. Can you share with us maybe your plans now after hearing from some of the other local leaders here?
Yes, absolutely. As I said earlier, our first plan is to create a local evaluation committee to look at this data that we just started collecting. I think that's very important. And it's interesting because it's only been a week, and looking at some of these observations that our members have entered, patterns are forming already. There is a consistency in terms of the elements that our administrators are commenting on. They're focusing on certain elements far more than others. So that's something we'll need to have a conversation about. And the other thing that we have started, and we're in the infancy with this, but we started with our administration, our superintendent, and he's running this by our Board of Education. We're going to look to do something similar to Delran and run a Take the Park event as well. And we're looking to do that in early next year, early 2015, January. Hopefully, we're targeting a date.
Oh, great. Well, thanks, Mike. And congratulations on that plan. And hey, you just gave me a perfect segue to our next topic. But before we do, I got ahead of myself. We have a question from the audience that doesn't really seem to fit anywhere, but we're gonna throw it out there anyway. And this one's for Mark. Mark, are you ready? So, question from the audience: how important is it for an administrator subject matter when observing you?
Well, this is because I'm a teacher. Yeah, I think it's critically important, but let's be honest. We have 600 some odd school districts in New Jersey. A lot of them are very small. It's just a reality in this state that your principal, you may be in an elementary school, your principal's background was teaching 7th grade and you teach kindergarten. You might be an art teacher and your subject supervisor came as a Spanish teacher. It's the way it's going to be. I would say that it's up to you to educate your observer. If you're doing something that is specific in your domain, explain it to them. You know, pull them aside afterwards, write it down, but let them know what you are trying to accomplish in your classroom. Do not assume that they will, because almost certainly, again, unless they have your specific background, they won't. I think that is a really excellent point.
Whew, great. Thank you, Mark. And now we're going to transition to our fourth and final topic. We're going to talk a little bit about the community here. We talked so far tonight about internal organizing efforts, but we all know on the panel that the only way we're going to stop or slow down all of what's happening with this freight train of testing and evaluation is if we get parents in the community behind us. And we have Ani McHugh and Mike Kaminsky here from the Delran Education Association. Have done a lot of organizing around the film Standardize. So, Ani, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your local has done? You and Mike can kind of go back and forth with this one. And Roxanne, I'd like to get you into this question also, because Willingboro showed Standardize, I think, twice last week. So we could hear a little update on that. And Ani, we did get a question from the audience. Maybe you could answer in your response. Have you noticed a change in stress levels of members once you started this advocacy work? So have members gotten stressed? And I don't know, Ani, can you just kind of bring this all together for me?
I can try. Once you turn off your microphone. So members, are members stressed? Yeah, I think members are stressed all over the state, especially, you know, with all the new mandates. But before I even talk about Standardize, I want to talk about the DEA Facebook page. I was just working with Patrick Grumaker at the Communications Tools Workshop and talking about social media. And what we did in Delran was we sent we set up a Facebook page over a year ago because we wanted to do a public page that anybody could see and anybody could like, that would allow not just teachers but community members to you know, understand the issues that we were dealing with and read about them whenever they wanted to. So we set up the Facebook page, and I think that once we started sharing information, and teachers realized that they weren't alone, they started feeling a little bit more empowered, and they started feeling like, you know, they were less afraid to speak out, I guess more inclined to speak out, and, you know, realized that a lot of the concerns that they had that maybe they hadn't expressed were the same concerns that other people had. So the Facebook page was our first step, and it was important that we set that up before any kind of, you know, we weren't bargaining or anything like that when we set it up. We wanted it to be a proactive step just to kind of unify the association and the community, and so we could sort of all be on the same page. So we set that up, and then shortly after that, we Standardize was released in the winter. And it screened in, you know, one night in a lot of the major cities in the United States, and I saw it in Philadelphia, and you know, with a few other teachers, and realized that it would be something that parents should see, and that teachers should see, because, you know, a lot of people think, well, what's the big deal about standardized testing? Because we all took standardized tests. We took the Iowa test when we were kids, and everybody. You know, it's just a part of school testing, and a lot of people fail to realize the motives behind the testing, the purpose of the testing, how much money is being spent, how much money people are making on testing. So we decided to, you know, screen it in April of last year. We applied for a Pride grant. We reserved the Lowe's Theater in Cherry Hill and put out an Eventbrite invite for people, and we had an overwhelming response, and you know, we ended up screening it twice. So that was sort of the first part of our initiative, I guess you could say. We're going to do a Take the Park event in December, which Mike will talk about in a few minutes. But you know, that it was a good way to get people informed. It wasn't coming directly from us. It was, you know, a bigger issue than just the Delran Education Association or even New Jersey. It's a national issue, and I think people realized that. And parents were really eager to see what the big deal was about, and now they know.
Thanks, Ani. Yeah, they're certainly hearing a lot about it in Delran. And Mike Kaminsky, you want to tell us a little bit more about the efforts there?
Yeah, so as Ani was saying, I mean, you know, we had a great conversation with our community over standardized and what the issues, the basic issues are related to testing of our children. And, you know, from that first moment back in April, we knew that we had made a connection with the community that was so genuine. They connected with this issue of, you know, what's happening in our schools, why are we making the decisions we're making financially regarding these tests, you know, what is this doing to our children, you know, are we even allowing our children to be children anymore? So we were having, it was such an empowering conversation to be with you know, hundreds of parents and board members sitting in the same room and talking about what we really want to be talking about, which is what's best for their children. I mean, it was just an amazing start. So, you know, Ani and I had decided early on that there was a next level to this, and that next level was going to be when the park came out. And we wanted our community members to be prepared for what this testing meant. So what we did, utilizing Pride funding, again, is we decided we were going to host an event at Burlington County College in Mount Laurel at the Enterprise Center there, which is a large 500-seat auditorium. And what we were going to do was invite community members to come in and take this park test for themselves, to see what the questions are like, to see what the technology's like, and then just have a conversation about what it is that this test is supposedly measuring. I mean, remember, we're talking about, you know, supposedly college and, some air quotes there, career readiness, you know, at grade 3 right now. You know, that's what we're talking about. So we want to have a conversation about, you know, are the questions that you see, are they somehow assessing college and career readiness at grade 3? And does this technology allow our students to be successful on a test, even if the test were grade appropriate for them? So there's a whole range of questions that we think are just naturally going to come out of this. And I can tell you, out of 500 people in that auditorium, we've already filled 350 seats. NJEA through Pride is going to help us to bring in some Chromebooks for community members and our own members who can't bring their own Chromebook or iPad for that night. So that's another service we're going to provide to our community. We've already invited every single superintendent in Burlington County. We have invited every Board of Education in Burlington County. We have invited every legislator in Burlington County. And, you know, we want this to be an all-inclusive conversation. We want people to see this test, experience, and be honest about what they're seeing. And let's talk about where we go next together. So it's just to make it clear, though, this is not only open to Burlington County. This is open to anybody who wants to register, and I've sent that link to Mike Ritzius so he can put it out there. Anybody who wants to be a participant in our December 3rd Take the Park event, please come and join us.
Thanks, Mike. And why don't we just hear quickly from Roxanne, and then Mike, I'm going to come back to you, so hold on a minute. But Roxanne, you just had 2 showings in Willingboro of standardized this past week. Just this week, I got applications for Pride funding to show standardized in Riverside, the Riverside Education Association, South Brunswick Education Association, and the Patterson Education Association also. So, Roxanne, just briefly, how did it go?
We did not have the turnout that it looks like Delran had. I missed the first showing. Mike was there, and the second showing, there weren't that many there, but it did open up great discussion on what's happening in the classroom. We had parents talking about why they put their students in charter school or private school, and we had a great discussion. What we want to do is follow up and go door to door November 1st to really reach out to the community and get more feedback on just members and parents, and kind of give them a little bit more information and hear their thoughts on what they think is going on. That was pretty much it.
That's great, and if you want some help going door to door, I volunteer, so make sure to send me an email. But I want to go back to Mike Kaminsky. So, Mike, what is the goal of showing standardized and doing these park events? What's your goal?
Well, ultimately, our goal is to put a stop to these things that we know are bad for children. Not only the over-testing that's going on, but all of the practices that happen inside our classrooms every single day that we know is simply geared to success on some kind of standardized test. We know these things don't inspire a love of learning in children. All they do is they get children to sit quietly for hours on end and fill out little bubbles, and we know that these practices are bad, and we need to find a way to put a stop to it. You know, local districts should be deciding for themselves what measures are best to address and assess student growth. We shouldn't be handed mandates down from on high and told we're going to implement this no matter what. We're going to use valuable instructional time, you know, for testing. We're tired of that. As educators, as parents, as community members, as taxpayers, we're tired of these things that are costly and that are ultimately bad for children. And that's what we're trying to do with these events. We're trying to engage everybody in a conversation about what's best for children and how to stop these practices that are bad for children. And we're going to ask everybody, you know, every single you know, group of people who's at this event on December 3rd, we're going to ask them all to take specific action to put a stop to this over-testing of our children. And we're going to have a number of action items. You know, it might be different for a teacher than it is for a board member versus a superintendent or a taxpayer, but we're going to have a long and involved conversation. We're going to give everybody an action to take away with them so we can all do something to stop this testing nonsense.
Woohoo! So I'm going to turn it over to Mark for our final thought, but before I do, local leaders watching, we've had about 125 people tune in tonight to the conversation, so thank you for your time. And if you want to get this started organizing around evaluation, your first step should be to reach out to your NJEA UniServe field representative who can get you hooked up with all the resources, and you can take a sneak peek at the resources by going to njea.org/achieve NJ organizing. So finally, Mark Weber, the Jersey Jazz Man, you want to bring this all home for us?
There we go. If I could get to my mute button, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm just listening and thinking back on this hour. I wish that somehow we could have taken this and put it on MSNBC, because I see so many times in the news people discussing education, what's wrong with American schools, we need to fix teachers, that, you know, this whole thing that came out this week in Time. Did you notice, if you read it, not one teacher was interviewed? There wasn't one teacher who had a quote in this entire article about teachers and about tenure. That tell us about what's going on. The conversation has not included us, and that has to end. And there's no reason why we can't start with events like they're doing in Delran, things that they're doing in Patterson, all the great things that NJEA is doing to reach out to the community, also to reach out to each other to talk about these things. Unfortunately, the dialogue has become so polarized that our position is being misrepresented. And I think that's one of the most important things that we have to do going forward when talking about things like evaluations. We're not against evaluations. We want evaluations. We want good, high-quality evaluations. We want to improve our practice. We're not against accountability. Of course we want accountability. We don't want people in the classrooms next to us who aren't well-trained, who aren't, who aren't capable of teaching children. We don't want that. None of us want that. We're not against all testing. Of course you have to have some testing, but we want these things done appropriately, and we want them done in a way that is good for children. That's the primary goal. So in terms of evaluation, if the evaluation system is set up, not that it informs a decision, but that it compels a decision. And unfortunately, that's too much of what we have in Achieve NJ right now. Not that we're trusting administrators and trusting their supervisors to make good decisions and that we're all working together to improve our practice, but that the state is going to tell us, you must do this. That's not the way that's not the way any other profession works. It shouldn't be the way the teaching profession works. So we have to become our own advocates. We have to go out, speak strongly for our profession, and really tell the correct story. We're not against being held accountable. We're not against being evaluated. We just want it done correctly. And if we go out with that message, we're gonna win this fight. And I hate to say it, we are in a fight right now, but people like teachers. People are on our side, and we're going to win this fight because it's the reasonable position that is best for children. Jim and Mike, thanks so much for having me be a part of this. This was really terrific.
And thank you, Mark, and thank you to all our panelists for your time and your expertise and your knowledge. And to everyone out there tuning in, thank you also, and stay tuned for more Hangouts from NJEA on upcoming topics of interest. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Guys, hang out. I'm going to turn off the broadcast.